We need to tell stories so that people are seeing the impact that their dollar or their contributions are making. We need to tell the stories so that they can see themselves as a potential donor volunteer. And that storytelling happens in all kinds of different ways. I mean, we use social media. Of course, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, not to mention YouTube and Flickr and, doing all that. Using traditional media, getting out there and telling these stories in local communities where these wishes are happening. So inviting, whether it's the local newspaper or it's television or it's radio, whatever it is, and telling the stories in traditional media. It's telling stories also, through all of our events. We do a lot of different events throughout the year where we have a lot of the public invited.
We are back. Welcome to another episode of Over a Pint. In this episode, we focus on the fast-paced, ever-changing world of marketing told through the eyes of folks that are doing it every single day in the trenches. Pat and I did not do a lot of theory on this one. It is all about real-world, practical experience told to you by those that are doing it, and that always includes our guests. So grab a pint of your favorite local brewski, or whatever your choice of drink may be, and join us for the show. As always, I am joined by Mr. Pat McGovern, my partner on this podcast. Pat is the new biz director at Acedia, an award-winning digital shop here in Milwaukee's 5th Ward. Say hello, Pat.
Hey, everybody.
And I am Kurt Lingo, vice president at Celtic, a full-service award-winning advertising agency located in Milwaukee's historic 3rd Ward neighborhood. So, Pat, I was thinking about this podcast a little bit over the weekend with Forrest, and I was thinking about the last 3 years because it's been almost 3 years now that we've been doing the podcast. And we've literally touched just about every category. So I'm thinking about manufacturing, outdoor industry, travel, tourism, sports, and athletics. We just had the Bucks on.
Yep. Higher
education, food and beverage, and of course, nonprofit. And the one thing that seems to ring true for all of the companies, organizations that we've welcomed on is that regardless of how big or small or what they're selling or what their purpose of existence is, at the heart of it lies a brand. Their challenges, goals, whatever is, they're going to be different. We know that, but they all need to get a really firm grasp about who they are, what their message is, make sure that that message is authentic, and then figure out a way that best intersects that message with their audience. And bottom line, no matter who you are, your brand is very sacred, and it needs to be viewed that way. So I'm excited to bring Forrest on. Forrest Doolen is the Senior Director of Marketing and Communications at Make-A-Wish, Wisconsin. And Pat, I don't even know where to begin because there's a real reason why organizations like this roll out of bed. We need them to roll out of bed basically every morning to get after it because they're doing some heavy lifting. So I went to the website, and a couple things I just want to read off here. Together, we create life-changing wishes for children with critical illnesses. When a wish comes true, it creates strength, hope, and a transformation in a child and a community. This is heavy stuff. Okay, this is heavy stuff. So I want to get Forrest on here to talk about Make-A-Wish and all the things that they're doing, as well as how they're marketing this organization. So, Forrest, let's get you on here. Welcome to Over a Pint.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you. So, Forrest, we call this podcast Over a Pint. We do it for a reason because what we like to do is we like to go around the horn with our guests, and everyone kind of promotes something that they're enjoying. Sometimes it's a brewski. Sometimes it's not, but is there anything that you wanted to promote here today or anything that you're enjoying? Tea, water, coffee, soda, beer, whatever?
Oh gosh, promote is a heavy word, a loaded word, but I certainly will share, we're summer now, right? And so we've entered beer garden season, and I love going to especially the Sprecher traveling beer gardens. Yeah. And my favorite go-to there is their Abbey Tripple. So you will find me often throughout the summer at one of the Sprecher beer gardens enjoying that Abbey Tripple.
That's awesome. That's a good one. Pat, what are you doing today, man? What do you got?
Well, I am loaded to bear. First off,
Good.
Forrest, I am psyched that you're on the pod. Thank you so much for your time. This is going to be super interesting for me. So let's start off with the hard stuff. I'm continuing to go deep to the well with the Yankee Yankee IPA from Wisconsin Brewing. There we go. I've got a cup of coffee with me right here, and I've got some
Wow.
sparkling water, lemon flavor. Just in case we go long, I'm set. Okay.
Talk about touching all the bases. Well, we just had Wisconsin Brewing on, and we've had Sprecher on too, by the way, for us. So I am going back to the well a little bit too. I just like this brewery. This is Company Brewing in River West. Great brewery. I love the vibe over there. And this is one of my favorites. It's their Lordy Hazy IPA. Love what they're doing. Love this beer. So anyway, so enough about beer. We're here to talk about some pretty important things. So Forrest, if you could, I kind of threw out a few nuggets about, Make-A-Wish Wisconsin that I was able to pull from your website. But if you could, in your own words, in a very condensed way, just give us a top line about Make-A-Wish Wisconsin, in case there's some folks out there that are less familiar about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So basically, Make-A-Wish creates life-changing wishes for kids with critical illnesses, and we do that together with the community. That part of it is really important because we're a very small staff, and so we are able to grant all these wishes with the help of literally thousands of people across the state. And that's one of my favorite things about this organization is it involves anybody and everybody, and there's a place for just about anyone in our organization. And the work we do is life-changing. It changes these kids' lives. It gives them hope. It gives them something to look forward to. And there's now research and studies that have been done that show the impact physically, emotionally, mentally, the impact on the trauma that they've experienced. There's so much, and not to mention, and that's just on the kid, and then the impact on their families and on their immediate communities surrounding them, not to mention everyone else that's involved in the wish.
That's awesome. Well, and we're gonna dig a little bit deeper into the brand. But always, as I said, behind a brand are real faces. It's people. So why don't you let's hear your story for us, if you could share with our audience a little bit about Forrest Doolen, your background, just kind of give us the Cliff Notes version, if you will, about who you are, what makes you tick.
Sure. Well, I've been working in the marketing arena my whole career. I mean, I started my career 31 years ago with Celtic advertising, and I started in public relations, and then ended up on the creative side. And I spent 12 and a half years of my career in advertising, working for 2 different agencies. And then I moved on and actually moved into the ministry and did work with the church for a number of years. And in the middle of all of that, I also began working a lot with nonprofits. Actually, my second agency, the majority of my clients were nonprofit organizations, and so I did a lot of work there and a lot of growing, and went through a nonprofit training program called Future Milwaukee, which is housed at Marquette now. And then eventually, long story short, it led me to Make-A-Wish's door. And a friend of mine was the director of development and communication at the time, and they were trying to figure out if they were ready to add another staff member. And so I started out doing some part-time consulting, and then eventually I became the head of the marketing and communication. And I've been here, it'll be 16 years in September.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's a great run. So all right. So about 16 years ago, you joined Make-A-Wish Wisconsin. And obviously there's circumstances as to how that kind of came to be. But, I guess if you could, you've been there now. And obviously the lane that we work in on this podcast, it's marketing. And we're very intrigued by, the brands themselves. So you're there now. You've put your thumbprint on that brand from a marketing perspective. Talk to us a little bit about the brand, I guess, from a personality perspective, because we meet so many people from so many different companies. And Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, but the one thing we figure out pretty quickly is that all these brands have different personalities, right? Different face. Yeah. I'd like to know what is this brand all about? If you could describe the face, the voice, the vibe of the brand that you're a part of, Forrest.
For sure. you know, even years after I'll be gone, you know, someday, you know, when I leave Make-A-Wish, that brand will always be a part of me. And part of it is because the brand it's about warmth, it's about hope, it's about joy, and ultimately it's about children, right? I mean, that's at the essence of who we are. We're working to care for children. And so our brand is focused on just that, on having that caring, nurturing, warm and hopeful vibe, smiles. You know, there's a common misperception about our brand, you know, that has existed for a long time. And I mean, I've been here 16 years and I feel like I have preached this over and over again, but there's a lot of people that think when they think of Make-A-Wish, they think, oh, it's for dying children or it's a child who's got a terminal illness. And it's not that at all. It's about serving these kids and giving them this wonderful experience that then allows them to go on and survive and thrive. I mean, I have a lot of Wish, you know, being here this long now, I know a lot of Wish kids that are now adults and they're, you know, they're starting their own lives and they have their own children. And matter of fact, we had a Wish kid whose wish was granted many years ago, and he's now a dad, and his daughter, unfortunately, has a critical illness, and so she received a wish. So it's a second generation, really.
Wow.
And so it is that hope and that joy that is really at the essence of what we do, and that's at the essence of our brand as well. I mean, when you look at our social, and when you look at our web, and you look at all the different things, it's those kids' faces, and it's the remarkable hope on those kids' faces that is really what our brand is all about.
Hey, Forrest,
Go ahead,
Forrest, if you wouldn't mind. So you come from advertising and agency world, which is its own unique animal. And you end up on the doorstep of Make-A-Wish, right? When you get there, what are some of the big surprises for you? I mean, it strikes me as a bit of a downshift in like kind of readjusting how you look at marketing and how you come into things, given that you were coming from an agency over to this. So what were some of the big, oh, wow, this is how the nonprofits work? And I know you had some experience before you got there.
Yeah.
But now you're inside the tent. So yeah, give us that kind of like, what were some of the eye-opening things? It's like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, you said small team. Oh, I didn't realize how small the team was.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's funny, right? I mean, the funny thing is that I actually found my big surprise was there were more similarities to my working agency life than I thought there would be. And part of that is, you know, working in agency life. I mean, I worked with, you know, 2 agencies that were both startups when I started with them and grew. And so you were wearing a gazillion hats when you were working in agency life. You were working with a limited budget. You were working with sometimes insane deadlines. And you were also working under, you know, in an arena where everything had to be right and perfect. And, you know, and so all of those same things actually applied when I started working for Make-A-Wish. Limited budget. You know, I am the budget, so to speak. I mean, I have a design manager and that's it. And so that's our budget. We don't have a marketing budget per se. I would love that, but basically our marketing budget is really more of a printing budget than anything. And then working with just oftentimes just really crazy deadlines, trying to get things turned around. And actually that's even gotten more intense over the course of time with the advent of social media and all these other things where you just have to respond like that.
Yeah.
You know, Make-A-Wish is, for me, I've worked with a lot of nonprofits. Make-A-Wish is one of the most well-run nonprofits out there. It is run very much like a business, but it's a business with a heart and with a mission, and there are policies and procedures for everything, and we take everything we do very seriously. You know, we make sure we double check everything. We make sure that everything is as perfect as it can be, and we're working with lots of different people and lots of different audiences. And so really trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to reach those audiences and do all of that well. So it's funny, you know, your question, I get why you were asking your question, but my surprise was, oh, this actually felt very similar to
Yeah.
what I lived. And, honestly, I mean, with me and our design manager, we almost kind of serve as a little in-house agency, if you
Sure.
will, because we serve our development department for fundraising, but we also work with our mission department on the wish granting, and we work with the admin department. We've got a couple of regional offices. So we're constantly doing work for those different parts of our organization, and then figuring out, okay, what's the best solution to this communication problem?
Forrest, yeah, good question, Pat. Good answer, Forrest. When we started off earlier, when I was kind of doing the setup, I mean, we mean this. It's kind of like we literally have talked to people of all brands of all sizes in all buckets. And at the heart of it is a brand. And you kind of outlined a little bit for us. It's like, well, our marketing team, we're small, our budget is small, but your challenges and everything you're doing is monumental. So let's dig into that a little bit. It's like, even with a small budget, you still have to market this brand. So talk to us a little bit about, okay, let's break it down a little bit. With even a small budget, who are those key audiences? What is that core message that you are trying to get out? And I actually appreciate what you're saying. You said earlier, like there's a misconception sometimes about people think about the brand. It's not just for children that are necessarily dying. There's more to our story. Talk to us about the core message. Talk to us about those audiences.
Sure.
And then talk to us, what channels are you best using to get it out to whomever it might be?
Sure. Yeah, and our challenges, fortunately, we're at this stage of our organizational history. There's a lot of people that have heard of Make-A-Wish, so we have great brand recognition. Majority of people have at least heard of Make-A-Wish and generally feel good about the organization. They have a positive feeling when they think of Make-A-Wish. Our biggest challenge from a messaging point of view is really helping people understand that they have a role to play, because where we struggle is that people don't see themselves as part of that mission because they don't have a connection, right? They don't necessarily know someone who's got a child, or they've not gone through that. So they seem to, they just are like, I don't know that's really, it's great. It's a great organization, but I don't feel really personally connected to it. And because they don't feel personally connected to it, then they are not necessarily choosing to give to Make-A-Wish. And so for us, that is kind of one of those big challenges that we're trying to overcome, and really helping people connect to the organization. Our audiences really are, it's a wide variety when you're talking about, the different audiences that we serve and are reaching. We have, obviously, first and foremost, wish families, right? We have families who have children who are diagnosed with a critical illness. Now, we do a lot of that outreach really through the medical community. We work with local children's hospitals and the different clinics and different things like that. So we build those relationships, and we do a lot of that as a grassroots, in a grassroots way. Our next group is volunteers. We work with over 450 volunteers around the state to accomplish this mission. And so we have to do outreach to recruit more volunteers, especially in certain outlying areas. In Southeast Wisconsin, we have a fair number of volunteers, and so we're pretty set there. But there are some other outlying areas, and even down in Southeast Wisconsin, and specifically in the Racine-Kenosha area, where we struggle a little bit to get volunteers. And so we need to do recruiting and getting people involved from a volunteer point of view. And then, of course, we have, the donor, right? We need to reach, people who are going to give and support the Make-A-Wish organization. And, we're completely privately funded 501c3. So we rely solely on the donations of individuals, companies, groups, other foundations and grants and all those different things. And so that audience can be quite large, and we've worked really hard both on a national and a local level to break those audiences down and to really take a look at, okay, who is our donor, right? What does that person look like? And our donors tend to be heavily female, and they tend to be in that 40 to 65 range. But, we also know that we have the millennials are coming up. There's more millennials in the workforce, and what they're predicting, 75% of the workforce is going to be millennials, I think, here. And so we recognize that we also need to be reaching that younger demographic as well. And then, but we also have a lot of financial turnover. There's a lot of folks who are getting to that point where they're passing on their wealth. And so still also working with people that are older as well to give them the opportunity to be involved in this mission by donating to Make-A-Wish. And that's really how we look at it. Our message is, we're giving you the opportunity to be a part of this amazing, life-changing work by making your contribution, by giving of your time, by donating your airline miles, whatever it is you have to give. You can be a part of this life-changing work that's going to make a difference in this child's life. And these kids are your neighbors. They're in your backyard. They're your coworkers' children. They're your family goes to church with them. These are real people. These are real kids that are really dealing with a lot of stuff. And you, potential donor, potential volunteer, whatever, you have the opportunity through Make-A-Wish to make a difference in their lives.
I go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, no, Forrest, that was awesome, and there was a lot there. So I just want to go back a minute to something that you said. You said a big focus of what you do and your team works on is how to connect the community to the organization.
Yeah.
Right. So as you're kind of working on your plan for, 2024 or, in the past, how do you go about that? Like, what's the playbook that, that Forrest and Make-A-Wish uses in order to make that happen? Right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year,
yeah.
how do you evaluate that? Then, like, home run, man, we slaughtered it this year, or
yeah.
Man, this thing's changing. There's a different dynamic. We're gonna have to evolve some of our tactics. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, our focus primarily, is storytelling, right? That's really at the gist of what we need to accomplish. Is we need to tell these stories, and we need to tell stories so that people are seeing the impact that their dollar or their contributions are making. We need to tell the stories so that they can see themselves as a potential donor, volunteer. And that storytelling happens in all kinds of different ways. I mean, we use social media. Of course, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, not to mention YouTube and Flickr, and, doing all that. Using traditional media, getting out there and telling these stories in local communities where these wishes are happening. So inviting, whether it's the local newspaper or it's television or it's radio, whatever it is, and telling the stories in traditional media. It's telling stories also, through all of our events. We do a lot of different events throughout the year where we have a lot of the public invited. We have a golf outing coming up in early September, and we have a walk for wishes coming up in September, and we do a gala, and we do all these different events. And the thing that makes those events so successful is really the storytelling. It's really helping people see that, oh my gosh, what this organization is really making a difference in my community, and I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And right now we are planning for 2024. There's a lot coming up. We're actually turning 40 as an organization next year. And so we really want to take advantage of that and tell all kinds of different stories that are going to celebrate the 40th year, but also give people the great opportunity and invitation to come and join us and be part of that. And it's providing those front porch experiences. So it's those simple events that someone can come and just learn and, learn a little bit more, but also really asking those that have been with us for a long time to step up and make some other significant contributions in honor of that 40th birthday. And at the end of the year, as far as evaluation goes, that's always the biggest evaluation. I mean, we evaluate ourselves based on, the success of our wishes being granted. So we grant typically about 400 wishes a year. Now, during COVID, and we can talk about that later, but during COVID, we took a big dip.
Sure.
We are back to normal, and we are on track to grant 400 wishes this fiscal year alone. And so, so that's one of our measurements, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that we are granting all of those wishes without having any without having any child or family have to wait because of financial need, because we couldn't afford it or we couldn't grant that wish. So the other measurement is also this success of those wishes. We always evaluate every wish that is granted, and so the family, we get a survey from the family, we get surveys from the wish granters, and so we're always looking at, how we are achieving those wishes. And then also the referrals. How many referrals are we getting in? Because that also is an indicator. Are we out there? Are we doing our job? Are we telling those stories so that those referrals continue to come in? Because we don't, we can only grant the wishes for when a child is referred to us. And so, and then some of it's also kind of, it's a little ethereal.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
we will suddenly get, a donor will come in and say, oh, I used to listen to your wishathon, your radioathon. I heard these stories and I want to support this. And we have a great example. We have a foundation. They heard our stories through our radioathon and they started giving. And then our development team started working with them and they've become one of our largest donors. And it was from hearing that story on air on the radio. We've had people that have made planned gifts, included us in their estate. They never gave a gift to us ever before. And all of a sudden we're getting a $200,000 estate gift. And we find out it's because they read a story in their local newspaper and they saw what a difference this organization made. And they wanted to be a part of it at some point in their life.
Wow.
Pat, think about what Forrest just ran us through. And Forrest, this is exactly why we love to have guests on from all categories. You, in a few minutes, you earlier on, you broke down for us your target audience. We were kind of we were leading you down there, like, talk to us about your target. You knew exactly who they were. And clearly there's some research, you're talking about, well, let's start with the families. It's the volunteers, it's the donors. Clearly there's some research behind that. And then when we asked you about results, you dug deep. It's like, well, here's how we evaluate. This isn't, yes, there's a lot of heart in here, but there's also there's evaluation. We survey. There's a lot of accountability on your end to kind of figure out,
Yes.
okay, how good did we do? It's great that we fulfilled X number of wishes, but now we're going to figure out well, let's break it down. I like what you said earlier. You were talking about, you said, a lot of people might think of our brand a certain way, but you had kind of went down the path of it's your neighbor. It's maybe a colleague. It's we might be connected to this more than we think. And it's closer than you might think. And a lot of times I think that's the case in life. I think sometimes things don't really hit us until you walk into, I can speak. It's like when you go into a children's hospital with your child, the bell goes on. It'll be like, oh, I get it. When you look at your outside of families, when you look at the volunteers and you look at donors, and obviously donors would be the individual and the corporate side, is the larger percentage still coming from folks that had a touch point? So if I'm a volunteer, most of your volunteers are coming your way because they do know someone. Or when you look at some of the brands that support you, and there's some biggies, you got some great, very big reputable brands. Is it because there's people that are part of those organizations that have had this hit close to home? Or is it it's a little more even than you think, guys? We've really been pushing this so that, talk to us about that, because I'm
sure. And those are really two different. I'll talk to you about the corporate in a little bit, because those are two a little bit different, because the corporate it's a little bit of mix. But as far as the donors and the volunteers and so on, some of them definitely, I'll start with the volunteers. The volunteers, we have wish parents. They went through the process, their child received a wish, and they're like, I want to pay it forward. I want to become a volunteer. I want to become a wish granter. And then they grant wishes for other children and families. So there are definitely people, or I had a brother or sister that got a wish, or I knew someone. So there are definitely, on the volunteer side, I would say there are more people that are probably connected more personally to the mission. Though we also have people, again, that also just, they know about Make-A-Wish and they want to give of their time and they want to give it to a good place where they know they can make a difference. And so they also choose Make-A-Wish for that reason. On the donor side, it's actually the majority, I would say the majority of our donations come from people that are not necessarily, connected to the mission. We've heard many times from people that they're giving because they have healthy children and they are so thankful that they haven't needed Make-A-Wish, but they know that Make-A-Wish will be there if someday they were to. We've had people say, I have healthy grandchildren. That's why I give, because I'm so grateful and so blessed and feel fortunate enough. And again, the connection point there happens because they heard the story, right? They saw what a child had to go through. They heard the challenges. I mean, what our kids go through is really crappy stuff. It's dark, it's challenging, it's traumatic. They go through stuff that most adults don't go through. And they do it at, somewhere between the ages of 2 and 18. And it's stuff, it's heartbreaking. You hate to see that. And so I think a lot of people, when they hear that story and they see that, that's when they make a shift. I'll use an example. I'm sure he'd be fine with me sharing this. So Richard Kessler, who used to own Kessler's Diamonds,
Sure.
Big brand here in the Milwaukee and around Wisconsin. That was one of the reasons Richard always wanted to support Make-A-Wish, is because he knew he was felt fortunate enough to have a healthy family that never had to go through that. And so he wanted to help others that did have to go through that because he was so blessed and fortunate. And that actually leads to the corporate side. So the corporate side, sometimes it depends. These days, honestly, a lot of corporations, they follow their champions. So if I'm working for, whatever corporation XYZ, and I go to HR and I say, I really want us to support this, and this is why. There are definitely, that does play a big role, I think, in a lot of corporates these days. But also, there's a lot of corporations that also know the benefit of partnering with a brand like Make-A-Wish. Make-A-Wish has, it's a very positive brand. It's well known. So a business knows that this is smart for us, because these days, and you guys know this, cause marketing and being partnered with nonprofits is really important, because people want to support those businesses that are supporting their community and that are giving back. And so a business, when they have the opportunity to partner with Make-A-Wish, there's a lot of benefits to them other than just, even the impact that they're making with their donations, because it's also a reflection on them then as a business to their customers, and they can share those stories and they can talk about what they're doing. And so it really, makes a big difference for them.
Yeah, cause marketing, it's interesting you bring that up. It seems to come up a lot with our guests, and and I guess this kind of segues into the next question. And Pat and I were talking a little bit about this before you came on, and it was about competition. And we all live in a competitive world. It's like, if you're an advertising agency, guess what? You're in a competitive arena. If you are in manufacturing, depending on what you're selling, or competitive. Forrest, I put you in the same arena. It's like your purpose for existence is different. It doesn't mean that you're not separated by different things, but when you're talking about, there's a lot of wonderful organizations out there.
Yes.
That need help.
Yep.
Very worth, and they need, they've got a great brand. It's very reputable. It's backed by great people like you who truly care. All the reasons you outlined are great reasons why donors and corporations, volunteers need to get behind. Talk to us about how you look at your business, your organization, your industry from a competitive perspective, because the reality is it is. And
Sure.
You're knocking on the door, the same door that other organizations are knocking on.
Yeah.
Break it down for us.
Yeah, we are competing, quote unquote, competing with all kinds of nonprofits. I mean, yes, they're, Yeah, and you can break it down to there are a lot of nonprofits in the children's space, right? You've got Ronald McDonald House, and you've got Mac Fund, and you've got Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and all kinds of other organizations that serve children, Easter Seals, and so on. So we fall in that arena. But we also, I mean, we're quote unquote competing for dollars with the Humane Society and with UPAF and all the other organizations.
Right.
But I say competing in a loosely, because I think one of the things that I've found working in the nonprofit world is knowing that there are always exceptions, right? There's always going to be an idiot out there, but for the most part, a lot of people that work in the nonprofit field, they're not looking at each other as competitors. They're looking at, hey, we're all doing really good work, and we all get it. We all get that people have to make choices, and we all understand that. And so we just continue to work at it and really help people to the best of our ability connect with our mission. And if they give to us for a moment, if they give to us for a year, if they give to us for 20 years, we're going to be grateful for whatever that is. But we also will be supportive of those folks, whoever they support and whoever they give to. And from a branding point of view, I mean, we pay attention, right? I mean, especially on a national level. We are the second most loved brand in the country in the nonprofit arena, and we're second to St. Jude. So, when I think of competitive, St. Jude comes to mind because they do what they do really well, and they're a wonderful organization. They serve the same kids we do. They serve children who are battling critical illnesses, and they provide this wonderful service because they help provide cures and work towards cures, and they take care of these children physically and don't charge the families a dime. They do it very differently. They obviously do a ton of paid advertising. They've got celebrities to the nth degree. But when we're talking about who are we going after as a brand, okay, St. Jude, they do some things really well, and we'd love to be right there. So competition for us in the nonprofit field, I think there's just a variety of different things that you're looking at. At the end of the day, what we really focus on is doing what we do well, what we do, and doing it with the utmost integrity. We work really hard to make sure that we're being good stewards. We recognize that all of the funding that we receive, we're simply stewards of that. It's our job to make sure that those funds and those resources are being used to make a difference in these kids' lives. And so one of the things that we pay a very close attention to is our ratio. And this is just true in most nonprofits, where you basically have how much is going directly to the mission, how much is going to fundraising, and how much is going to admin. And those ratios are very important to any nonprofit. And any nonprofit that's doing well is at least at the 70% mark. For years, we were always in the 80% mark. COVID obliterated everybody because all of a sudden people's missions were stalled, and people couldn't, it just messed the formula up big time. But we're back on track to moving back closer to that 80% mark, where we want to make sure that as much of the resources received are going directly to the wishes, because that's an important business aspect. That's what corporations are looking at. That's what individuals are looking at. They want to know when they're giving that they're giving to an organization that is doing what it's supposed to. And we've all heard the stories, right? We've all heard the stories out there of nonprofits that have not done that. Mm-hmm. And it's a black spot for nonprofits when those things happen. It hurts all of us when people, don't do what they should do and don't act with integrity. But anyway, sorry, I kind of went down a little bit of a.
No, it's great.
Hey, Forrest, I would love to get. You seem like you've been there 16 years. You've seen a lot going on. Can you break it down for us? What's a typical day like for you? Give us the pie chart of where you're spending your time. How does that divide out?
Sure. It's as you can imagine, every day is a little bit different. Generally speaking, I'm paying attention to what's going on, right? I'm checking our social feeds. I'm looking at what's going on in social around us. I'm making sure I'm paying attention to the news and those kind of things. So I kind of kick off my day kind of taking a look at, okay, what's going on, making sure that our socials are scheduled, making sure I do all of the content development, I do all the scheduling, all the posting, the one man shop when it comes to the
Wow.
social stuff. So, so that definitely takes up some time every day for me. And then I'm working on, sometimes it's planning. Right now we're in the middle of kind of a strategic planning season. We are planning for our next 3 years. So I'm working on developing, plans for what are we going to be doing. I'm working on upcoming events, whether it's planning for those, writing scripts, promoting those events, making sure that we're getting the invites out, or, all those different pieces. And then I'm working with Mission Delivery on things that they want to do and they need to accomplish. Airline miles is an example where it's something that, 75% of our wishes involve air travel. So,
Right.
So we're trying to, and during COVID, that whole thing, kind of died down. So now we're trying to rebuild that. And I'm working with the Mission Delivery Department to kind of rebuild some things so that we can raise more airline miles, so that we can, help subsidize the cost of, because as you can imagine, air flights are not cheap right now. And so trying to fly a family of 5 to Hawaii is not a cheap thing. So,
yeah, go ahead, Forrest.
No, so it's so I'm working, on those different kinds of things. And then, also, oh, hey, this is a really cool, unique wish. Can we get this out to the media? And so it's putting together the press release and working, and maybe attending the wish, going out and being there and serving as the spokesperson or whatever that may be. And then it's also working with our volunteer staff and figuring out, okay, what do we need? Where do you need help right now? What do you need? What support do you need? It's writing e-newsletters, articles for our quarterly newsletter. It's a lot of different things. So,
I was, and I don't even know if I want to go down this rabbit hole because it seems so far removed now. But when we started the podcast, for us, literally we were in the middle of COVID, so a lot of times it was very interesting to get perspective on how brands were pivoting, what was their strategy, things like that. I think about with you and folks like Make-A-Wish Wisconsin and other organizations. It's like, when you think about the pandemic or whatever, it's like at the end of the day, a sick child, doesn't matter what the circumstances are going on in our environment, it's not going away. When I think about hunger, it isn't going away. So I can only imagine, during the pandemic, it's kind of like what an organization like yours and others were dealing with. Because it's like, at the end of the day, it's like other companies we can figure certain things out and we can kind of, for lack of a better word, the cliche, we can pivot. But I mean, at the core of it, it's like, we've got something, this isn't going away. I mean, this is something that it doesn't go on hold because there's a pandemic.
Right.
We still have that family.
Right.
We still have hunger.
Children being diagnosed with critical illnesses every day, and regardless of what's going on in the world. And so, you are correct. That did not stop. And we had to work really hard to become suddenly very creative. In every aspect of our organization. We had to be really creative on how we were granting wishes, because our travel wishes got put on hold. There was just no choice. So those were on hold, but then even, how did we deliver a room makeover or a shopping spree or any of those kind of things when no one is supposed to be near anybody? And you're working with a population who are the most vulnerable of all in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, our kids are vulnerable regardless of a pandemic. A lot of times our kids have to be super careful anyways, because their immune systems are compromised by their medical condition. And so we got really creative in how we delivered our mission, but we kept it going. And we got really creative in what we did from a fundraising point of view, because, we do a lot of events, right? Well, events were kind of thrown out the window. Matter of fact, our gala, our largest fundraiser of the year, the pandemic hit 2.5 weeks before our gala. So we had to convert our gala to a virtual event within 2.5 weeks. And so a lot of that was on me to kind of figure out, okay, how are we going to do this? And there's no one out there that's, this is all new, And so It was figuring it out, and we were able to pull it off, and we still raised over $650,000 at that gala, through that gala. Granted, I mean, our tickets were all sold, but even to just keep, all the fundraising aspects of it going. And we had it was incredibly successful. And then next thing you know, we're being presenters to all of the Make-A-Wish chapters around the country. Because again, nobody had done it. Nobody knew what they were doing. I was doing phone calls with people all over. I did a phone call with the San Antonio Spurs. I did a phone call with the New York Jewish Federation. I mean, people were just coming out left and right. How did you do it? What are you doing? So you just, you learned, you got creative, right? And you did what you had to do, because we couldn't just say, well, we're just gonna be on pause for a little bit, everybody, we can't, and thankfully, we made it through. We didn't have to put any wishes on pause because we suddenly weren't raising money. And then once travel opened up, then we were able to work really hard and grant all those travel wishes that had been on hold. And we are completely caught up. We have, we're still, our pipeline's a little higher than it normally would be, because as, we were catching up, we still had, regular influx of new referrals. And so, we have a lot of wishes right now. We've got about 500 wishes in our pipeline right now, but our wishes are being granted. Like I said, we're going to grant 400 wishes this year alone. So.
Wow, that's great. Well, it's like, it's like a marketing team may be small, but if they are, they got to be mighty at the same time. So as I'm hearing you talk through, it's like small but mighty. That's the theme. You have to be. You obviously need to keep on top of a lot of things. You need to be abreast of what's going on in the world, as you alluded to. So we're always curious, what type of things do you absorb besides the Over Pint marketing podcast, which I know is part of your, what do you listen to, Forrest? What do you listen to? What do you read? What are your channels to get the intel that you need to do your job?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I read all kinds of and look at all kinds of different things. I stay on top. I read the Business Journal and Biz Times on a daily basis. I get all their e-newsletters and just kind of paying attention there. I also read a lot of stuff. I get different marketing emails and e-blast. I get too many of them, honestly. Half the time I'm like, I don't even have time to read all of them. I also went through a program called Certified Nonprofit Professional, CNP, and through a program called Leaderosity. And so I also get a lot of information from them that I spend time reading. I read the newsletters from the Association of Nonprofit AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals in Milwaukee. So I try to really tap into a lot of different things, not to mention just general news, right? Just kind of staying on top of what's going on, because it's important that we stay relevant, and it's important that our brands stay relevant, and it's hard. I mean, we're all in a similar age arena, and there are days where I'm like, gosh, I am not feeling relevant, and yet it's really important that our brands stay relevant, and so I got to stay on top of what's next and what's coming, and and then our national office obviously also provides a lot of different resources, and so I read and spend a lot of time in those. And I'm in a lot of different groups. I meet regularly with colleagues who do exactly what I do at other chapters every month, and we just have a conversation, talk about what's going on, what's working, what's not working. And then I'm also part of, local groups here. I'm part of the Brookfield Chamber of Commerce, and I go to regularly to those different kind of opportunities and meetings, and, doing the best I can do to learn and listen, and also to share, right. And to help, help provide mentoring and teaching to the next generation too.
Yeah.
Along those lines, Forrest,
excuse
me, Kurt, along those
please.
lines, Forrest, what's new in your space? Right? Like with all the stuff that you've been consuming coming out of COVID and things that you've learned in COVID, how has that changed from 16 years ago when you
come out of COVID? The digital movement has been growing for years. However, COVID fast forwarded that like that. I mean, everything's digital. And so, it's working with our national office on, okay, what are we doing digitally in the digital space? How, and because of because it's even more so that now everybody's got niche, right? Everything, in order to find the people and to meet the people where we want to meet them, they're all over the place. It's no longer the mass media thing. It has its place, but it's okay. I got to work here, or I got to look here, and I got to look here, and so right now I'm looking into different digital programs through media outlets, exploring, okay, well, what would happen if we signed up for a digital program where they're going to provide some different things through social, and they're going to provide some other stuff through potentially like programming and content on digital TV or whatever, YouTube. And then if we want to do that, I don't have a budget. So then it's okay, who can we get to partner with us to underwrite this? And so it's starting to explore some of the digital space, really. That's where I'm, really having to be, because that's just the world we're in.
Yeah. Two things that I kind of wrote down, Forrest, is we had asked what types of things do you absorb to stay on top of things, and I just wrote down the word networking. So it's very clear that some of the things you were talking about were as simple as I talk to people, I attend, it's like, and to me that's very, very important, and that tells me a lot about someone like you, and I think there's a tremendous amount of value in that. And the other thing too is I when we think about trying to absorb, whether you're reading the Biz Times or whatever, if something matters to your target audience, it's got to matter to you too. So I've said, if you're reading the Biz Times and you're finding out about what's going on in the business world and what's going on with these 5 companies, well, that impacts you. You need to know that too. So anyway, as we wind down here, I guess, question I want to have for you is like, what's the one thing that keeps you up at night, and what's the one thing that maybe you were hoping we would have asked you that we didn't?
Oh, all right. Well, these days keeps me up at night. Usually the things that are keeping me up are the things that, like, how am I going to accomplish everything I need to accomplish, kind of thing, without stressing myself out. So, it's just, there's just a lot. It's just a lot. And I think that's true for anybody, whether you're in nonprofit or you're in private, whatever you're doing. I think these days we have a lot that we've put on our shoulders, and some of it we take on stuff we don't need to take on, or we think we need to take it on. And so I think it's just that, how do I prioritize what really needs to get done, and what's going to be most effective, right? What's going to be the smartest use of our time? I have to make decisions every day, and I have people come to me, other staff members, and, hey, what if we do this? Well, okay, let's evaluate that and think about that. Is that what's that going to accomplish? And so it's, making those decisions and really thinking through them. Your other question was, any last minute thing. The only other thing I would mention is, if anybody's interested, we have a great opportunity in September 9th. We've got our Milwaukee Walk for Wishes. If anybody, it's a great, fun public event. Takes place. We're going to be back at the Summerfest grounds this year, at the South Gate, and it's just a great opportunity to come and see Wish kids and their families, because that's the one event we have so many different Wish families that will participate, and it's a family fun event, and it raises money for Make-A-Wish. And you can register for free. You can start a team. You can do whatever you like with it. But I think it's a great opportunity for people, and it's an opportunity to have that front porch experience, to connect and see what this mission is all about.
That's fantastic. Final words are going to go to you now. So, how do people find you? How do people get more information about Make-A-Wish Wisconsin? If they're interested in being a volunteer, if you're a corporation, stage is yours, Forrest. Whatever's on your mind.
To contact us is through our website, wish.org/Wisconsin, wish.org/Wisconsin. All the information there on how to volunteer, how to give, all that kind of stuff is there. And then you'll also find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And so all you have to do is search Make-A-Wish Wisconsin, and you'll find us on all of those. You'll find me personally on LinkedIn as well, and Facebook. So Forrest Doolen, and it's pretty unique name, so it's pretty easy to find me on social if you're doing a search. And yeah, those are the best ways to find us.
Well, Forrest, on behalf of Pat, myself, and everyone over at Pint, first of all, thank you for being a guest. Thank you for all that you do. And on a personal level, it's been fun having you on, because obviously I know you and I've known you for many years. So I'm very proud of all the work that you're doing and what your organization is doing. So on that note, everyone, this has been another episode of Over a Pint with our friend Forrest Doolen at Make-A-Wish Wisconsin. Forrest, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Forrest. Bye-bye.
Cheers.